Why So Curious. I'm Liz.
And I'm Lisa.
And we are so excited to have you all here with us for our Friday episode. Lisa's going to tell you what it's all about.
Why don't you tell them what the Why So Curious podcast is about?
Why So Curious podcast? Well, geez, think about it for just a moment. Most of us have curiosities that we want to learn more about, but we don't always get an answer. We're left going, well, so what happens next? With the Why So Curious podcast, our entire purpose is to not only tell you what happened, maybe why it happened, or thoughts and theories around why it happened, and then how after that you're able to thrive through your process. So often you have somebody else that's writing your story for you. And with the Why So Curious podcast, you are now the author of your own story. Each of the days of the week, we have a different, shall we say, theme as to what we're discussing. We have our Mother Fighter Mondays, our Trauma Porn Tuesdays, What the F Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays. And today for Friday, we have
Forward Thinking Friday. And so I've always been curious about how the brain works. And that led me to ask this question: do you remember the future?
I love this question.
It's one that kind of gets you thinking about it because people are like, how can you remember the future?
Because you never forgot the past.
Exactly. And so funny enough, we are constantly remembering the future based on all sorts of memories that we have. Like the reason that we know how to walk is because it's based on a memory from when we first learned how to walk, which is super cool. There's also some memories and experiences that we've had that actually shape our future in maybe a really negative way. It's a mindset that we could get stuck in that could really keep us stuck instead of moving forward, where we're stuck in this cycle where it's like, I have lots that we could talk about, like things that I've experienced that other people might be able to relate to. And then like places where I was stuck and then what it took me to get off that roller coaster that was absolutely exhausting to me after a while. And so the key is really understanding that it's all about mindset. It's all about a shift in perspective. It is so simple sometimes. And people are left thinking, oh, that's all it was. I just needed a new mindset. A lot of time is actually not just you need a new mindset, you need truth. And so sometimes those experiences that we have, especially if they're based on traumatic experiences, it could be a car accident, which I've experienced that. It could be a storm that we were in that was life-threatening. It could be trauma from abuse, right? And so any kind of traumatic experience creates a memory that can keep us stuck in a pattern for the future. And so the goal is for us to talk through those things, learn from us again. This time, we want you to learn from our successes because we're sharing things that helped us get on a path to moving forward instead of staying stuck in something that would have kept us to where we start feeling like we're crazy, like we don't have a purpose, like things that we do don't matter because we just keep going back to the same place. And it feels like we're not getting any work done when in fact we're working really, really hard. And then when we're working really, really hard, but we don't feel like we're getting anywhere, what is that called?
I mean, for me, I just start quitting.
Yeah. And it's like survivor mode. You're just, all you're doing is just doing what it takes to get by. You're sludging. I describe it like you're walking through tar that is up to your waist. You're working so hard. The finish line is 2 feet away, but that tar is holding you back.
I mean, to get sentimental, do we all remember that scene in The Neverending Story?
The movie itself, the name.
When Atreyu and the horse and the despair, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Is that beautiful animal couldn't see how to get to the end of the light, to get to the tunnel.
Right.
And so today, what we're really going to focus on is getting you to that light, getting you to that tunnel. It's such a great way to complement what we discussed about for our Thursdays, where you're up all night long because your mind is racing and you can't turn it off. Well, guess what? Today is all about understanding how to still allow those thoughts because they're part of your process. There is a necessity to them, but they don't need to keep you up all night.
Right.
And so we're going to focus on that for all of you today.
Yes. So Forward Fridays it's going to offer you a switch in your mindset to get you out of the circular rut so that you get to experience a free future, so that you get to be thriving. And so here we go.
I'm so excited.
Me too.
Okay.
All right. So I am curious, Will. I just called you Will because I was thinking about my son. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm curious.
I mean, I love Will
Liz.
too.
I know. He's a good kid. I'm curious. When I was describing like an event from the past that set you on a trajectory for your future that was it was based on a memory, did anything come to mind for you?
Yes, absolutely. So I've shared a little about having a trauma in my life. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I've tried many times to understand, how did I get into that situation? What is it that allowed, and allowed isn't even the right word, right, but we're going to use it for the right context of what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And so I know, dear listeners, that you're wondering, what's your trauma, Liz? Because again, that's the whole purpose of why we're here, because we're also curious. We will get there. Come back for season 2. When I sit and I think about, how did I end up in that situation? And I look back in time, I can see that there was a pattern, to your point. There was a pattern in relationship, both with men and women. And so it's not necessarily your intimate relationships. Right. It really, for me, was not all, but many relationships in my life where there were either subtle patterns of abuse or not so subtle patterns of abuse. And it did stem all the way back to childhood, to those early years from 6 months to 4 years old, where I was horribly abused. Now, yes, I came forward, as I shared in the first episode, and I told my mom and I told my dad. However, being so young and not necessarily having all of the tools as a 4 and 5-year-old child to process that and to be able to teach my brain how not to allow that as something to continue. Later in life, throughout the years, it was so fascinating now as a slightly more educated adult to look back at that and be able to pinpoint those moments in time, to be able to say, it's because of those early years and those times where I didn't know how to say no. Right. I didn't have the power like we do today to be able to stop those things from happening. And it wasn't until I literally was facing life and death to be able to say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to allow it anymore. And finally, that pattern stopped.
So what do you think what was the switch in mindset that I'm not doing this anymore? Was there a person in your life? Was there a situation that happened that came up to where it was like all it took was that simple switch in perspective to where now you knew that you needed to have a reason to live?
I did. It was my son. It was my son, because I all of those years before that, there was never the potential that it could hurt my son. They were people in my life. They were not interested in the potential of hurting a child. But that individual, with the violence that he carried in his person, could easily have done to my son what he did to me. And that was the turning point. I knew that if I didn't leave the situation and stop the cycle from continuing, that I would not be here today. And the potential that my son would be in the same place with me. Yeah. And so that's what it took for me to literally go to the hospital, make that police report, and continue through until he was arrested and put into jail.
How much longer do you think it took for you? Because we've not really talked about this, but we share a very similar piece to where, I was living my life to die. The choices that I was making, I just expected to die. I mean, living on the streets, all of the things that I was doing, where it was just like, I woke up every day just wondering what it was going to take to die. And then when I did get pregnant with my son, everything changed. The perspective, I had something to live for. But it took me a while to learn how to apply the same value that I was placing on this child that was completely defenseless and vulnerable and needed my care and my protection to myself. when did you find yourself being able to apply that same level of care that you deserved as you did for your son?
Oof. Okay, so we're going deep here.
It's Forward Thinking Friday, people.
So I did leave that relationship. He did go to jail. However, I got in another one very shortly thereafter. However, now I had the tools.
Yep.
And that was the difference, is that I started seeing behaviors that echoed a lot of what I had ignored in the last one. That individual never laid his hands on me, but he used his voice a lot. He used his words, the emotional stuff. I think I lost like 20 pounds in a month. I was emotionally distraught. And I remember being with a friend who said, you know, you're better than this, right? And it was the trigger. It was such a trigger for me. And I was like, yeah, like I haven't done these thousands and thousands of dollars of reconstruction surgery to fix my face after what the first one did. I didn't go through the courts and all of that to end up doing this all over again. And I literally overnight, I left that relationship. The next day I was out. I did everything I needed to do. Any kind of entanglement that individual and I had, poof. Nice. I did it safely. I actually knew that the next day he was going to be going out of town. And I had said I would watch his place. So bye, get out of town. Made sure he was all the way up in Reno before I started doing everything, because I had to get certain things to come and get things out of that house. And of course his neighbors called him and told him, but he was in Reno. I was done by the time he came back. He didn't know where my new address was. I had found a new home. In 24 hours, I changed my entire life. Wow. That was it. I was done. I did not want my son seeing that it was okay to have a man displaying those behaviors and have a woman taking it. I didn't want my son to potentially become that man. Right. And I didn't want to become the woman I was before. Right. It stopped. And it was a 24 to 36 hour thing in which my son, my parents, I called them and I was like, oh my God, I just realized this is happening. I'm not doing this anymore. And they were like, well, yeah, you're not. But it took that moment of, I'm so much better than this. And actually knowing that, because that's the hardest part, I feel like, for those of us that get in these cycles, is you get so wrapped up, you're waiting for the next part because you've already experienced it. Your body already knows what that feels like, and you're almost looking for it. It's kind of like when you want coffee in the morning, you know how you're going to feel afterwards. It's the same thing in these cycles. Your body gets so used to it until you have to make an extremely physical, intentional, emotional choice to step out of it, either metaphysically stepping out of it, or in my case, physically stepping out of it. And I'm sure many of you have had to physically step out of things and mentally step out of things to be able to say, this cycle, we're breaking it here. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did beautifully, because it's what you were showing is, I mean, it was the most important move that you made with the skills that you had to protect your son. But what you found is that if you don't believe this for yourself, it's still going to perpetuate, because it's one thing to believe something for your kids or for your friends or for other people, but it's really important. What is the belief about you? And so we do not choose those people. It's like those relationships and those situations kind of choose us because it's a pattern that is attractive to people that know how to gain power over another person. And I wouldn't even suggest that the people that are that second relationship that you got into, like, he was looking for you, but he knew how to find you, whether he knew it or not, right? And it has a lot to do with memories from the past, shaping our future to where we get in these cycles and we're like, why can't I ever make a good decision? You're trying so hard. You're like, I'm never going to do that again, but you do, right? And it has nothing to do with whether or not we aren't working really hard, whether or not we aren't doing the right kind of work. It has everything to do with the mindset.
Yep.
Everything to do with the mindset, which can be absolutely so hard to overcome when it's been your whole life. When it started at the age that it did for you. It is a pattern that you didn't choose, you didn't even allow. It happened to you, and that is a key thing. Things like that you have no control over when you are a vulnerable person, when you are dependent upon other people, as children are, which is why it is so important that we are talking to our children, giving power to that voice, to that child. But I'm also curious.
Of course you're curious.
I am so curious. I'm curious because, again, I can share a little bit about my personal family life with, my family. Some of the abuse had started to come out, I guess, and my family had taken some initiatives. But I want to ask you, because one of the things that you shared, and this is not to slight your parents at all, I'm just wondering, because here we are, we're trying to figure this stuff out together, right? As to how can we stop the cycle? Like, do you feel, or is there anything else that you wish that you would have had with your parents? Because yes, you told, and they did the brave thing of taking the steps and turning that person in. But do you feel like there was still something missing as you were growing up? Again, not to slight, not to shame, because I'll share mine if you want me to get you off the hot plate.
So no, I think part of, and again, this is as an adult doing the hard work. So I don't know that I've shared it here on the podcast, but I've shared it with you. I'm adopted. And so many of us adoptees, we come with the baggage of feeling like we're unwanted. Nobody loves us because we were given away. It wasn't until I was 21 years old that I actually got the full story when I met my biological mom of what had happened. She did all the right things. She actually had written a letter to give to the attorney, to give to my parents, to explain what had happened. Attorneys stink sometimes, and in the 70s they were kind of scrappy, and that never happened. So I personally feel that for everything that my mom and my dad and my multiple therapists did over the years, for me as an individual, it wasn't until I started getting the answers and working through that on top of working through with everything else that I finally dealt with it. And to be totally transparent, I don't think I dealt with it fully until after this all happened, because I finally was able to work on the layers. If we go back to that, there were so many layers of that Liz, because I'm not that Liz today, of that Liz searching for things in others to fill holes and gaps. I don't need anybody else to fill my holes and gaps anymore. I do that for myself. Woo! Yeah. But it took going through the worst times of my life to get to that point where I said to myself, I don't need anything. I don't need anyone. I am responsible for myself and my well-being. But I'm telling you, it took me going to the depths of despair, to the darkest places, to questioning the why am I here, and doing all of that really, really, really hard work to get there. So no, I don't think my parents could have done anything differently. In fact, they did it all right. They got me the help. They got me the support. They got me the therapists and all the different things. Me as an individual, I had so many questions that nobody could answer for me.
Yeah.
Lots of
big blanks.
So many blank holes.
Yeah.
So many. And again, when I met Terry and then I had to do all the hard work after the thing, I finally got there. I finally got there. That's my individual story.
Yep.
I don't know that others would share that experience.
Right.
But there's, like I said, so many layers. Yeah, I think we all did the best that we could with
Yeah.
what we had.
Awesome.
And then when we got more information, it just made it that much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason that I asked was because when I think back, and my parents are totally okay with me sharing this because they've been really transparent, is, for me being 4 and not, my survivor brain was shutting down, right? Like just no memory, but my behavior was showing that abuse had taken place. And so the interesting part of the story was when one of the abusers was confronted, my dad says it with, just a deep sorrow that he encouraged my abuser to get counseling, but I never got it. And so because what he would say is that there just wasn't, people weren't talking about this. There was no, that was, I don't know, that was over 50 years ago. No, not quite 50 years ago. It was, well, not that far back. But it was a long time ago where people were just sweeping abuse under the rug. And it's not that that's what my parents wanted to do. It's just they didn't have the tools. They didn't know what to do. And I think the thing that I just want to convey to any of you is if you or your child, their brain, the way that it's surviving is to just draw a blank, have no memory, which is, we have soldiers that experience that. We have people that can actually completely forget a trauma that has happened to them because of their survivor brain doing its job to get you through that situation. So it would have been really, really hard for my parents to have known even how to help me even more. But honest to goodness, to get a little bit ahead of everything with your kids, no matter how old they are, if you are constantly having conversations about their worth, about their value, about what does it look like if somebody says, I love you if, or I love you because, not I just love you. When people are like teaching kids how to determine manipulation, teaching kids how to determine when somebody doesn't have their best interest in mind. If we're just having those conversations with our kids all the time, it really does set the stage for you becoming that safe person that they can come to and share what they need to share. Because I always say, if you are setting the example of what unconditional love looks like to your kids, they are going to be able to determine a fake. But if we're not talking about it, and if our kids we're just kind of like going through life, just like, okay, get up, get dressed, go to school, pick you up, have dinner, do your homework, go to bed, not having intentional conversations, again, that sounds very simplistic, but at the same time, I love the fact that what I'm hearing over and over and over again from all of these therapists, from all these psychiatrists, from all of these brain studies is the most powerful place for healing to begin is in safe, secure, attached relationships. So, which is why, when we connect, we have that safety, that security, because I'm paying attention to you, you're paying attention to me. And when I hear you say the old Liz, I love that old Liz because she was such a fighter. Oh my gosh. I know that we can carry a lot of shame from the decisions and the choices that we made in our past, but I love that girl. I love how hard she fought because she was survivor Liz, but now you're thriver Liz.
Yes.
And there's going to be days and times where you're going to have those old patterns come back where you're going to find yourself in survivor mode, but you've got people in your life, right, that are going to help you get back on that path of thriving again. Because sometimes we need each other to see when another person is struggling or back in that survivor mode. And, because it can be a pattern, because it's part of our past and it's trying to sneak back into our future. It's like we can help each other get back on track when it comes to where we're at and our story of thriving and us being the author of our story.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. Hey everybody, I just want to take a second here to acknowledge a couple of our sponsors. First, I want to acknowledge the organization called Power Over Predators. I do happen to be the founder and executive director, the CEO, whatever you want to call me, but Power Over Predators is a program, it's a tool, it's curriculum, it's video trainings that are there to help protect kids because Power Over Predators, we aim for a world where kids discover their worth, can find their voice, and then take some pretty bold steps to protect themselves and then to ultimately advocate and protect their peers. It's also an opportunity for parents and communities to be equipped so that they can protect the kids in their community. I mean, it's our future. We've got to protect these kids. So we are completely about ending exploitation of our kids by equipping them with that life-saving information, because I want them to achieve their goals and dreams. Who doesn't want that for their kids? So please, thank you to Power Over Predators for being a sponsor to the Why So Curious podcast.
And how can we find more information on Power Over Predators?
Go to poweroverpredators.org. You can follow us on social media. You can, our website is a wealth of information for you.
We'll see you there.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, everybody, I want to tell you about another one of our sponsors, which is called MACE, and that stands for Mothers Against Child Exploitation. You can be a man against child exploitation. You can be a marsupial against child exploitation. I don't care who you are. What we are looking for, this is a volunteer group. It's a grassroots group of people where the goal is to get 1 million moms to sign up for $12 a year so that seriously we can save the world. Do you know what I can do with that money? I will save so many babies with that money. And so if you're passionate about protecting kids, I need you in the ring, okay? We need some mother fighters right now to help protect our kids because the numbers are ridiculously scary, and I'm not gonna go into that right now. But I just wanna say thank you to MACE for being a sponsor to the Why So Curious podcast. So if you're curious how to join and become a mother fighter like Liz and I, just head to poweroverpredators.org, hit the MACE link, and all the information that you need is right there. Got any other questions for me?
I think you nailed it.
All right.
Thanks
everybody. Okay, so thanks. That was really sweet for you to share all of that. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit into a trauma that can be what we call what's the opposite of not intentional? There's intentional trauma, and then there's trauma that just happens that you had, nothing to do with. There wasn't a person intentionally imparting trauma upon you. So that would be like a natural disaster, or that would be a car accident, or, even slipping and falling on an icy, which not in Tucson, we don't have very many of those, but,
But it happens.
It does happen. So, it can be from an accident. And so I just kind of wanted to share, just to simplify, because we're going deep when we're talking about the layers of trauma from abuse, because there's a lot of layers to that. When it comes to just helping us understand the mindset that we need to have if we associate it to a non-intentional trauma, like a car accident. Mm-hmm. So I'm borrowing my former mother-in-law's car. And oh, by the way, we have a new guest today. It's Finn. Sophie was so ridiculous this morning. She had to go to the dog park and run. but Finn is here.
Finn's staying with us.
Finn's staying with us this morning. And so if you hear him clicking around, he's just checking everything out. But I'm getting in the car. I'm doing my normal routine. I put my son, who was 13 months, in the back seat of the car, and his big old, back in the early 90s, their car seats were obnoxiously huge, and had that big old thing that came down over his head and looked all padded and wonderful until I was going around a corner at the normal speed that I was supposed to be going. But what I didn't know was there had been construction going on. And so these dump trucks would come out, and they had overfilled their trucks with dirt. So that when they would take off, the dirt would shimmy out the back and land on the road. Well, then we had a massive rain.
Right.
And so the next thing you know, you are on mud. And so I was going around a curve at 45 miles per hour, hit the mud, and it threw my car off the road, rolled 2.5 times. We hit a rock first. Thankfully, the way that we hit the boulder, it didn't completely just smash in my car. It actually launched me into a roll, and we landed on top. And I, came out and screaming because my baby is screaming in the back seat, hanging upside down. And he is covered in blood. And so, of course, I'm thinking, oh, dear Lord, and I couldn't get him out. I couldn't get the buckle to unbuckle. I come out of the car and I'm screaming, and people had seen the accident. And 3 other cars swerved at the same spot, but they had slowed down enough. Mm-hmm. But the mud didn't throw them off the road like it did me. And so anyway, they're getting my kid out and they're looking at me and, they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. Just give me my baby." And so it turns out when we hit the impact, his mouth, right where the big old puppy thing was where the little piece of plastic is. The one piece of plastic that you didn't want his face to hit was right where he hit, and it split his nose. But it was just a really bad bloody nose. It was a bad bloody nose.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me, my jawbone was showing because when I hit, my head hit the windshield, and I don't know if it was the steering wheel or what, but I had 27 stitches in my face because I had done a lot of damage. I had actually thought I broke my leg because my knee was hurting so bad. So anyway, I go get the stitches, I recover, and my baby's doing okay. And so about 2 weeks later, I decided to drive for the first time. I figured, get back on that horse.
Yeah.
You get bucked off, get back on that horse. Mm-hmm. What I hadn't been aware of was what the PTSD was going to do to my brain. And I'm in my truck this time, and I'm going up a hill, and of course it's raining again, but the tail end of the truck starts to spin. Mm-hmm. And I, thank God, had the wherewithal to just get off to the side of the road, but I was shaking so bad because I was recreating the accident in my head, right? So that is exactly what we're talking about when it comes to how big of an impact a memory and an experience can have into shaping your future. Because now, when am I ever going to drive again? I didn't want to drive again. I was going to let that experience control whether or not I had the freedom to get out and move on. Mm-hmm. And it took me years to go ahead and get comfortable in a slide and learn how to come out of a slide. And it took me, you don't want to drive with me if I'm the one driving when it comes to icy roads, because I cannot tell my body to not be nervous. And so I just have to ground myself. I have to take a deep breath. I have to tell myself this isn't the same situation. You have the power here. You're in the control here. It sounds kind of ridiculous, I guess, to some people, but it is absolutely not, because that is the only way you get back to where you are not letting that experience control what's going to happen to you in the future. Now, that was just a simple understanding of what we're talking about forward-thinking Fridays, right? Where it's like just learning, oh, okay, I get it. Because one of the things that I, again, share in common with you is at a very young age, the trauma from abuse, where it led me to was I just felt like I was on a roller coaster ride. Or I described it to my therapist. I'm like, every year during the fall, I just get ready to die. And she just looks at me. She's like, "What does that mean? Like, what are you describing to me?" And I said, "Well, it's kind of like my whole life is like based on this weather pattern to where there's a tsunami coming. Mm-hmm. And I can see it way, way, way out in the distance. And so here's this big, massive tidal wave coming at me. And, when it finally gets to me, it never kills me, but it almost takes me out. And then I have to go through tons of recovery because I'll be suicidal or whatever it was that was happening at the time, feeling so hopeless to where it's like, okay, I start to get better in February, March, April, May are okay, June, July. August, I start getting, I start feeling this tension. And she goes, "Wow, that's a really good description." She goes, "What if we get in a lifeboat and we go over the tidal wave this time?"
Oh, Finn.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, really? It's that easy? How do I go over a tidal wave in a boat?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, we're going to go over it this time.
Just go through it.
Just go. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? She said, well, we're not going to disregard that in your life, there's a tidal wave coming at you. But this time, instead of you bracing yourself, going into survival mode, bracing yourself to get taken out, mm-hmm. submitting to the process again, because that was all I knew how to do, we're going to get in the boat. And it was the first time, and of course my husband would have been the one in the boat if he'd understand. Of course I would have asked somebody, is this even a possibility? The shift in the mindset was that I didn't have to let the tidal wave take me out. But what she also correlated it to was, she goes, it's probably the first time you suffered a life-altering trauma that you have never grieved, that you have never had the opportunity to give a name to what it was, talk about how it impacted your life and set you onto this trajectory. And so just like if somebody loses a loved one to a death, even if it's a natural death, that anniversary of that death, you feel like you've lost that person over and over and over again. Now, some people never recover from losing loved ones because they are stuck in that. Some people, it gets a little lighter every single year. And it's not that you don't grieve the loss of that person, but you are not letting the loss of that person create the narrative for your forward thinking, right? For your future. I was stuck in something that had not been identified, something that had never been grieved, and that little girl had never been found. And so every year it was like I was dying over and over and over again. And oh my gosh, that is not a fun place to live. It is exhausting. And so when just that, again, we can tell all of these long stories, and it's just a matter of let's get in a lifeboat and go over it this time. What? I didn't even know that was an option, right? And so for any of you who are feeling like I've been doing all of this work, I go to therapy, but I am stuck in a rut, you might need a shift in perspective. So I don't know if you are on that roller coaster, if you have a word picture for yourself that defines how you feel like you're never going to get ahead, I will be the one to pull the lever so we get to stop that roller coaster ride, and I'm going to invite you to get off, right? You don't have to stay on that roller coaster ride, and all you need is somebody in your life to say, let me help you get off, right? Let me help you get over that tidal wave. Let's get in a boat. It's called a lifeboat, and I'll be in that boat with you, right? So that's the whole point, to forward thinking and not letting things from your past determine where you're going to go in the future, where you're always remembering the future, but you feel very stuck in the past. So for any of you who can relate, man, it is when I had the opportunity to go, there's a lifeboat. Sweet. It was scary when I got in that lifeboat though, because it came, the tidal wave came. And I just hunkered down. I just hunkered down in a lifeboat and I got over it. And then it's just been, if my husband were here, he would say every year he always gets really aware of what time of the year it is. And he'll check in with me to see how I'm doing. And, and then it's just been really sweet because he's just like, hey, fall came and went.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know, the tidal wave it's gone. So that's been really cool. That's why telling our stories is really, really important too, because sometimes there's things in our past, if we aren't verbally processing stories, we don't even realize that we're stuck in a phase, right? That we're stuck in a trauma until we start processing. And for another podcast, when I shared that story about my grandfather, it opened up some memories I didn't even know that I had, and like some actual situations that I went through and experienced that I had forgotten about, because that's what my brain does. It shuts it down. It says you're not going to remember that because you won't survive if you do go through that memory.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I just have a quick little story to share.
Yeah.
You talked about getting bucked off a horse and getting back on. Last Sunday, I took my beloved horse, Boomer, who you know.
I do.
On his first ride into the Saguaro National Forest. Now, Boomer and I have had a lot of firsts together. He was a show pony before I had him, and have been teaching him how to be a horse. Long story short, didn't go so well. Didn't go so well. He did indeed buck me off into a cactus. And I was left bruised, battered, bleeding, the whole 9 yards. I didn't want to get back on. I was terrified. So I walked his unhappy self 2 miles until I finally said, it's time to get back on. I got back on. I rode him home. And then I cried. But the most important thing, when we think of forward thinking, do not stay in that moment.
Right.
Push yourself through it. You are stronger than you think. You are capable of doing anything. You might need help. You might need Lisa. You might need Liz. You might need your partner. But you can do it. I got back on that pony. I rode him home. He was so sorry. He's and still apologizing to me every single day. But I share the story because it is a real life thing. It was a trauma. My body hit the ground and stuff came up that I hadn't thought about in a long time.
Wow.
Especially when it hit my face. But it's fine.
Yeah.
It healed.
Beautiful.
It's fine. I'm fine. It's okay to go through those emotions and to feel those things and to have those moments. And like Lisa is saying, it might be more than a moment. It might be a couple days, might be a couple weeks, a couple months. I encourage each and every one of you to feel those feelings and allow them to work through your body, because the more that you work through your body and out of your person, that cycle will stop. You will begin moving forward, whether it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. You will continue moving forward too. And again, we're not saying any of this work is easy. It's not.
No.
It's taken us combined over 100 years to get to where we're at today. Okay? So
Not that old.
I say that in jest. It's taken us a long time to get here. By no means are we experts, but we love sharing what we've experienced and what we've gone through, and then in the hopes that it will help all of you.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Lisa has a challenge for all of you.
I do. I have a challenge for you. We're going to kind of shift gears a little bit, but it has everything to do with what forward thinking looks like. And so I have mentioned that one of our sponsors for the Why So Curious podcast is a nonprofit organization called Power Over Predators. It's my organization. I founded it. I love it. Part of that organization, we have started a grassroots volunteer program called MACE, which is Mothers Against Child Exploitation.
Woo!
Exactly. And it also stands for Move Against Child Exploitation. So if you want to join the movement right now, I have a challenge for you. My goal is to get 1 million moms to sign up. Join MACE. Takes you what? Less than 2 minutes.
It's so fast.
To put in your information, and then just join for $12 a year. That's $1 a month. Okay, $1 a month. I'm only asking, can you give $12 a year? Because my heart is for us to start thinking forward for our kids, for our families, for our futures. Because right now, our kids are stuck in trauma. They are stuck in so much abuse, bullying online, sexual abuse online, sexting, sextortion, all of these things. I don't want to give you all the bad news because it's a little overwhelming, but I would rather have 1 million moms giving $12 a year than a handful of people trying to make a big difference for a big problem if we all join together on this. So here's what my challenge is, all right? The challenge is going to be, you go to poweroverpredators.org, you click the MACE button, you join. Give your $12. It's going to last the year. If you didn't watch the show with Brianna and I, what you're going to know is that the money does not go back to anything but the community, but the kids. It goes into helping kids get therapy. It goes into helping kids who need financial aid for attorney's fees if they're in the middle of a court situation. It goes to making sure that our program, Power Over Predators, is being offered in schools all across the country where kids are getting access to this information that is literally saving their lives. And I do not say that lightly. We get it from principals, we get it from teachers, we get it from parents, we get it from the kids. You saved my life. I was in an abusive situation. I didn't know the signs. Now I know how to get out. It's really important information, and it's a no-brainer, and we can start having these conversations with our kids. That's why I want Mama Bears, because a lot of us feel this is too big. I don't want to look at this, but this is your kids, and I know you want to look at this. You just feel like, what am I supposed to do now? Join MACE, right? Join MACE, and you will be equipped with everything that you need. And so the challenge, join MACE, get 10 of your friends to join, donate that $12. I'm going to send you a really cute car decal, right? Finn, do you like this idea?
Yeah.
Okay. If you get 20, I'm going to send you the car decal and a shirt, a t-shirt, and these shirts are stinking cute. You will want to wear them everywhere you go. And then finally, if you get 30 of your friends to join, then what I'm going to send out is the sticker, the t-shirt, and a bottle of MACE with the Mace logo on it so that you can, again, instill, you deserve to be protected. Here's some tools that you can use. Here's some steps that you can take. Seriously, it is simple. For those of you who do not have time, but you do have the $12, all I need from you is to follow, tag, and share. Awareness is key. If we are not spreading awareness, we just keep going out. We don't know what we don't know. And then we get sideswiped. And then we're like, how did that happen? How did I find myself here with this situation with my kids? So you are going to make a huge impact just by helping us spread awareness. And like I said, I don't even care if you read the posts. Like, follow, share. Somebody's going to get some information that they needed. That's what we're committed to providing to people is as much helpful resources as you can possibly use. So our website has got tons of resources that are available to you. And again, we're just hoping for 1 million moms to join, to donate $12 a year so that we can make an impact in our kids' communities, in our kids' minds, so that we can give them a new mindset. The goal is a growth mindset, right?
Correct.
Growth, forward thinking, not staying stuck in the patterns of abuse, which our children are experiencing at unprecedented levels. So I hope that you will take the time, you'll go to poweroverpredators.org, you will join MACE, and then you will represent with getting 10, 20, 30 people. And the challenge applies to your friends.
Yes.
So if your friends sign up, they get to do the challenge. They get to get 10 friends. How hard could this be, people? Let's get this whole mother fighter group of people.
Tell people at your office.
Yeah.
Tell people where you work.
Yeah.
For all you know, your company may support a movement like this,
Right.
but you don't know until you start talking about it.
Right.
And once you do sign up, not only can you share, repost, you can also email us. Remember, we're always here to listen to you. Thank you so much, Cindy, for sending us a note. We appreciate you. You can reach us at podcastwhysocurious@gmail.com. Let us know how you're feeling. What do you want to hear? Again, we're coming up on the end of season 1.
Yep.
Phineas is so anxious to be with us here. Hi, buddy. Let us know what you want to hear about in season 2. We want you to be a part of this journey with us.
Yep.
Let us know if you want to be on season 2. You could be sitting in one of these chairs.
Exactly.
Think about it. You could be playing with all of our dogs. We have loved so much sharing our first part of the journey with you. And we can't wait to see what you and we do next as we go into season 2. But don't worry, you've got more coming.
Yep.
We've got our Saturday.
We do. We are so excited to release the Sweet Sounds of Saturday podcast where, like mentioned earlier, it is literally sounds of kids. Sounds of Kids at the ranch, which is where you and I get to go one Saturday a month and work with kids and adults, with horses, with cows, with dogs, where we literally just do life with these kiddos, right? But the thing is more importantly, we are listening to these kids. They are sharing their deepest things with us in large group settings. And oh my gosh, they have a lot more wisdom than we give them credit for. Oh my word. So anyway, it's just an opportunity for you to hear their voices, their laughter, their truth, their story. Yeah. So we are committed to protecting them, and we are committed to coming alongside them, getting in that lifeboat, stopping that roller coaster that they might be on, whatever it is we can do to help a child understand their value and how much they bring to this world, and that they don't have to stay stuck in their trauma, that they did not deserve the abuse that they have suffered, right? It gives them a growth mindset. And so my tagline for our time at Rancho Milagro is creating a culture of joy.
Yes.
Because that's what we want those kids to experience. Many of the kids we work with have never experienced joy, but they come out there and they're like, I love it here. And they like to be silly. They like to do really fun things with us. We do lots of great things, but more importantly, you guys get to hear it on the Sweet Sounds of Saturday. That was a huge intro for that day.
Oh, but it's one of the best days of the week.
Yeah, it is.
So again, let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you're hearing. Let us know if you want to join us. But as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you for supporting Power Over Predators. Thank you for supporting Mace. Yeah. Thank you for supporting Lisa. Thank you for supporting me.
Yes.
With that, have a wonderful Friday, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.